here with Lex.
Hi.
Regular guest on the channel. Well, this time she's just like managed to get herself on my channel to talk about her book.
Yeah.
She wrote a book.
Primetime slot. Didn't bring the finished copy because I just didn't.
I want you to do a quick, like, what's your book about? And then we're gonna go into the rest of the video.
This book is for teenagers and young people generally and young adults and people who need a bit of positivity in their lives. It is a self-help book with lots of positive affirmations, but it's not positive affirmations in a really general way. Like you often hear people being like, my dreams are as high as the mountains. No one says
Yeah, that is, I got that on a mug, I think.
Yeah, I can fly as high as my dreams. It's not like that. It's like realistic affirmations for your actual life. Hopefully it's funny. I mean, I haven't, like, it's
I haven't read it.
haven't read it. When you write a book, you don't want to read the book, and I read it one time all the way through and never again because you just,
like when you got a finished copy.
yeah, you just see all the things and you're like, oh god, this could be better. But actually I opened it the other day for the first time in ages and read a random page just to check what was in there. Yes, because I didn't really know.
It's good.
And it made me laugh. So either I'm really conceited and like terrible, or it's all right. Please pre-order my book or buy my book whenever this video is out. It's all right.
I have read it and I can vouch for that it is all right
All
and
right.
even better than that.
It's funny.
It's very funny. It's very funny and it's also very good. You can like dip in and out of it or you can sit and read the whole thing. I like all the cultural references. I also like the things that I can pick out where you're like, I know the story behind it. Like if you watch your videos, they'll recognize certain bits from it.
Yeah, my ex-boyfriend's gonna recognize some funny stories and he's pre-ordered. Thanks, my ex-boyfriend.
And we're doing an event together at Foyles. Do you know the date?
9th of July?
That sounds right. The other topic of today, besides talking about your book, is, I don't know how to explain this, because originally I was gonna do YA books inspired by classics or that are retellings, but then actually I wanted to make it broader and just do books that are inspired by fairy tales, Greek mythology, or like any other stories that they're retelling or like heavily inspired by. And we have a lot. There's a lot, so get ready. Did I even say your name? I said your name, didn't I?
I'm Lex.
I'm gonna let Lex start.
I'm starting with Song of Achilles because this book. It's a retelling just of like the myth of Achilles, the myth or the fact, as I've decided that I'm going to take it all as fact. And I also decided I'm going to start worshipping the old Greek gods.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, because I don't have a religion and I just feel like this is a really good religion. Although a lot of it, I was talking to my boyfriend about it, he's like, a lot of it's just like Zeus doing really terrible things.
Oh yeah.
He's a bad boy. He's a really bad cloud man. So maybe I don't worship Zeus. I'll find someone less problematic.
I think,
to
yeah, you
worship.
just, I mean, there's a lot to pick from, right? You just kind of pick and choose. Is that how it works?
If I'm worshipping the old Greek gods, I think I get to decide how that works.
Put out flowers, put out food.
Is it from Patroclus's point of view?
I don't know, I haven't read it.
Patroclus is a guy who's like exiled to live with Achilles and his family, and there are a lot of kind of like rumors about what their relationship was, and I mean, rumors,
the old-fashioned
gossip, yeah, gossip about these mythical characters.
Rumors.
Like lots of people have said like, oh, maybe they were more than friends, and this kind of explores that. It's beautiful, and after I read it I was just absolutely devastated, like sobbing. I just felt so deeply affected. So if you want to, you know, get really emotional about Greek mythology, I would recommend.
Did you learn a lot from it as well? Like from stuff you didn't know yet about?
Yeah, because I think I studied the Greeks when I was in school. So I had a bit of basic knowledge, but I didn't know that much. And I feel like obviously now I think this is the real...
This is the one.
This is the OG version. It's like probably this is, you know, takes quite a lot of liberties with not the facts again.
I'm gonna also get a book by the same author in. This is Circe. This has been doing the rounds everywhere. Everyone's been talking about it. It was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. You've read this as well, right? And so this is my first Madeline Miller that I've picked up. I wasn't quite sure what to expect besides just, oh, it's gonna be like a retelling like of a creature of a person from Greek mythology. I took this to Crete. And we went to, how do you pronounce it? Knossos?
Knossos, yeah.
To like the archaeological site of the palace that was there, and I took a picture with it for Instagram. I was like, oh great. And everyone was commenting saying, oh, you really like took this to the perfect location. At that point I hadn't started reading it yet. And then I started reading and I was like, oh, part of the story is literally set in the place that we were standing. I, for the longest time, thought this was YA, and I think when I asked people for recommendations recently on Instagram, they also, when I asked for YA recommendations, they recommended Song of Achilles a lot, so I feel like both of these are quite like crossover.
Yeah, because I wouldn't think like, oh, this is a YA book, but actually they're relatively short. They're written like a really accessible way.
It starts off with her as like a divine teenager who lives forever. But basically the story is Circe has always had this, I mean, her family's just not nice to her. She is, what is she? A nymph. Her dad is Helios, who's in the sky. She does something that causes her to be banished to this island by herself, and you follow her story of people coming to the island, betraying her, befriending her. There's a lot going on, and I think you can kind of tell in this book that it's like there's all these little bits from her story that need to get added in. So there's like, oh, we're going on this side adventure of a couple of chapters. But I think it was like super readable, sad, fun. There's a lot in there, but I think it really fulfilled what I wanted it to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a really good exploration of mortality too. What's interesting about that one especially is I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that she is not really a central character in like other stories. It's more that
she's like the evil witch.
Yeah, like she's encountered. It's kind of like the wicked of like the Greek mythology world, like telling the story of the like bad witch or whatever.
And I feel like it deals with a lot of contemporary themes as well, but you'll figure that out when you read it.
You'll see.
Antigone, Greek mythology. Okay, we're good. Quick shout out to another one inspired by Greek mythology. I don't actually have the physical book of this, but I still have the, because I lent it out to someone, but I kept this. So yeah, this is definitely the real book. This is Homefire by Camilla Shansi. This was also definitely shortlisted. Oh, it was the Costa Awards, I think. And it was one of my favorite books of last year. I studied Antigone, we had to do like a remake of Antigone in high school when we were 14 and we had no idea what was going on. So I kind of vaguely remembered the story, but this is a very modern retelling about a family that's basically been torn apart because the dad has been sent to Guantanamo Bay, like arrested for being involved in like terrorist activity. And then it's about how it affects like the eldest daughter and then the younger twins, because the younger brother goes off and they basically realize that he's gone to join ISIS. And it's a lot about like family and sacrifice and I mean all the themes that you would expect around a story like this. I thought it was really interestingly written. You see it you move between different characters and different parts of the story. So yeah, I really like this, and it was really a surprising one. And also like you can read this without realizing that it's based on Antigone.
I only just realized that this is also Greek mythology. I think I knew deep down, but anyway, this is Everything Under by Daisy Johnson. This was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize. It was
is it just if you base it on Greek mythology, you're in immediately.
There you go, everybody. Prize-winning books. Base it on the Greeks. I mean, it's just quite ripe for retelling, isn't it? Oh, yeah. Ripe's a horrible word. So I don't want to spoil this by telling you exactly what it is. So there's nothing on the dust jacket, and there's nothing that tells you which myth it's a retelling of. The setting is like quite modern day. There's a lot about like living on canal boats and a lot about like family and difficult experiences with family. It's really dark. It's really, really dark. Okay. And when you're reading it, you have this sense of foreboding, like something bad's gonna happen. Like the whole time you just feel like this isn't going somewhere good, and it's not. But I really enjoyed the way it was written. It's kind of, this is upside down in the jacket for some reason, because my boyfriend's been reading it. I don't know, he's really quirky like that. It's not like stream of consciousness or anything, but it feels very like you're like in people's heads. I would recommend it. It is really good. I didn't know going into it about the myth, and that's why I don't want to say what it is. Okay. Because I only realized towards the end, and I had that moment where you go, oh my god, like I know what this is now, so I just want people to have that.
Okay. You've sold me. I want to read that. Next up, I've talked about this a few times on my channel, but like I had to be in this video, is the Boneless Mercies by, this is a great name, April Genevieve Tuchok. Great cover. All the rest of my books all match color-wise, and I don't know why.
Yeah, what is the turquoise and gold thing?
Yeah, look.
What? This is such a thing.
Maybe I'm just like drawn to books that look that way. This is a retelling of Beowulf. Did you have to study Beowulf in school?
Yes,
vaguely?
I think I've blocked it out though.
Yeah. Ancient warrior, big old monster in like one of those like old halls where like all the warriors are seated together. Big monster, that's all you need to know. This is about 4 young women who are mercy killers, and they go around this world that seems to be kind of Scandinavian, medieval, potentially a bit magical, which is like my perfect setting. So it's not high fantasy, but there are you know, some magical things in it. They are all orphans or have all run away, and they don't really like their job, so they basically go around and get paid to kill people, but in a way where it's like, oh, this person's really sick, so we want them to die. Like, we think they should die in a peaceful and respectful way. And then they hear that there's a monster somewhere far away, and they go, should we try and change our fate and just go after this monster? And then people will actually like us for what we do, and like we'll have a purpose that we can stand behind. And what I like is that all 4 characters, it's kind of like Hogwarts houses, where it's like they're all very different, they're all from a very different background, they have different goals, but it's just it's a really interesting adventure, very dark, with a bit of an interesting twist at the end as well, and it very much ends on a note where you're like, there's probably going to be a sequel. I don't know if there is going to be, but it's very open to a sequel. This was one of those books where I read the blurb and I was like, hell yes.
This is Sana's copy of The Bear and the Nightingale.
I love this book.
I don't have this cover. It's the most beautiful cover. I love it so much. Actually, the covers of her other books are pretty good as well, like the paperback. This is by Catherine Arden. Is that how you say her name?
I was like Catherine Arden.
Arden. Why am I giving it extra emphasis?
Arden.
Arden. It is a kind of retelling of Russian folk stories, and I feel like I've talked about this book so much that I just like I have a little script in my head.
Yeah, me too.
It's just set in this like rural. It's not rural.
It's kind of rural, but in a forest.
It's like
it's rural in a forest.
Yeah. It's set in like a peasant town. Basically, it's all about Russian myths around like spirits of the house and just like folk tales, and it's exactly my kind of magic, and the magic is written so well. Like, I think it's probably the best written magical story I've ever read in my life. In terms of like, you know, Harry Potter's great. In terms of how magic systems are described, like, because this
all makes sense somehow.
And this isn't, I think, part of that is probably the fact that it is a retelling. Like, it's not this thing that she's invented, but just the way she tells it's incredible, and it feels like more like somehow like magical realism, in that it doesn't feel like, oh, there's this whole ridiculous other, you know, set of circumstances and there's all these other rules that are belong. You never feel like you have to have it all explained to you.
It all exists, but some characters can see it and some can't. So like all the people believe that there's these house spirits and you have to leave food for them, but then the main character can actually see them.
Yeah. It's just so
good. It's great. It's hard to describe, but what I like is that it's like rebellious peasant girl, doesn't want to get married off. So I haven't read 2 and 3 yet. So it's a trilogy.
This is definitely the best one.
Okay.
Mostly because I love the small village feel. Yeah. And after that it gets a bit more epic. I haven't had a book series for so long where I've actually been waiting for the next one. And now they're all out, so if you haven't read them, you can read the
whole thing. My one is, I guess, not a rewrite similar to The Bear and the Nightingale, but more inspired by. I didn't realize it was inspired by a book, a classic, until I read the notes in the end. And then I also went to see Patrick Ness talk about the book a few times at events, and he kind of brings it up. So it is Release by Patrick Ness. Have you read this one?
No.
This is one that the American cover looks a lot more like, it's about like an adventure in the wilderness, and it's kind of like a gay coming of age story. And then this one looks a lot more magical, and I think this cover is probably a bit better suited to it. I want to read a bit of the acknowledgement that says, "The spirit of Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway and Judy Blume's Forever" is basically in this book.
Have you read Judy Blume's Forever?
I recently read it for the first time.
Because like that was the first book I ever read with graphic descriptions of like sexual things in it.
Yeah.
My friend lent it to me and I like hid it from my parents because it was like this secret thing that I was reading, and it kind of made me terrified of sex.
It's such a weird book. Anyways, this is all set in one day, so that's where the Miss Dalloway comes from. And it also has some kind of mystical like creature things in it. It's a weird one, but it's really fun. So it's basically a mix of contemporary YA of a main character just like going about his day, and then in between there's chapters where like a creature appears at the edge of a lake and starts making its way through town and no one can see it, and you're like, ooh, how is this gonna end? How are these gonna connect? But they do. I really like it. And I think he mentions Forever because he has talked about how he just wants to like explicitly talk about gay relationships in YA, because he's like, it should be talked about more, should talk about sex more in books, so that's kind of why that is mentioned. And then he's done more retellings. He's done the And the Ocean Was Our Sky, is that what it's called? Retelling of Moby Dick from the point of view of the whale, which I really want to read, but I haven't yet.
That literally sounds like it would be on like some like TV show, like 30 Rock or something, like people
where they've like made it up.
Like, yeah, like, oh, he's retelling Moby Dick from the point of view of the whale. Nightingale. This is another one which is just kind of like inspired by something. It's not really a retelling. So it's Carry On. If you have read Fangirl, how do you even say her name? Rainbow
Rowell.
Rowell. If you have read Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, you will know parts of Carry On, because in Fangirl, the main character writes a lot of fan fiction, and there are little chunks of the fan fiction that she's writing in the book. And when you're reading it, you're like, okay, this is obviously meant to be Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Like, it's kids going to a magical
clear.
school. Like, she's writing slash fiction between the
Harry and Draco.
between Harry and Draco. Yeah, she's writing Drarry fan fiction, but it's, you know, like it can't be Harry Potter, I assume, or maybe it's not that it can't be Harry Potter, it's just like she just decided to make it like a different story for different characters who are very similar. And then she just went ahead and wrote a book this thick. How many pages is
I
this
can't
book?
believe that they were like, yeah, write that.
It's like a
why not?
500-page book.
Is there a map? I want to have a look. So I haven't read this yet, but I've read Fangirl. Yes, there's like a magical map in the back.
There's a map of the school. I actually loved it. Because basically, when I read Fangirl, I actually skipped a lot of the fan fiction. You just laugh at yourself.
The football pitch.
Yeah, they have football instead of Quidditch. I skipped a lot of the fan fiction bits when I was reading Fangirl, because I was talking to Sana about the fact that I hate it when you are pulled out of a story to give like excerpts from something, like letters or other things.
And everyone I talked to skipped the fanfiction parts of Fangirl, but if you did that doesn't mean you won't like this, apparently.
Because I skipped all those bits because I was just like, I just want them to kiss. Like, I was so invested in the actual main characters, I didn't care about the fanfiction she was writing. But I thought I'd give this a go because I was just like interested to see how she would write a 500-page, essentially like version of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
But it's so good. I genuinely enjoyed it. Like, I mean, I love her writing anyway, but I just like, you kind of forget that it's like based on Harry Potter because it's original enough. Like, lots of it, I think you're kind of laughing about the fact that you're like, oh yeah, this is like, I can see where this came from.
But it doesn't feel like contrived or anything.
It's genuinely enjoyable, and I think she's writing another one.
I'm currently reading a book that's, I'm not including it in this video, but it's like similar to this, where it's a YA book of characters going to a like Comic-Con dressed up as characters from their favorite TV show or book, I can't remember. And then they go for a photo op, and then the whole building like crashes down, and they wake up and they're at the beginning of that story.
That sounds so
and they distract the main character by accident, and the main character just dies immediately. They're like, oh no.
What is this? I want to read this.
I have it somewhere over there.
The Fandom something?
Yeah, The Fandom.
The Fandom.
I think it's just called The Fandom.
The Fandom by Anna Day.
Next one. This is one I didn't even think about. I bring this up in videos all the time, but it's good, so I feel like I should just recommend it whenever I can. I was going through my shelves and I was like, oh yeah, obviously this one. Why Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys. Have you read this? Do you know what it is?
Vaguely.
This is about a character from Jane Eyre, and it's, I'm just gonna say the character because if you haven't read it, then it won't make sense to you anyway. It's Bertha.
Okay.
And it's basically her story of like growing up, meeting a certain person from Jane Eyre. It's just basically giving a voice to a very voiceless character in that book. And you can 100% read this without realizing. I mean, there's one passage where you're like, oh, if you hadn't realized before, you would probably figure out that like Jane Eyre and this story are kind of intermingled. But I think this is like such an interesting way of going, I don't think this character got like a chance to share their perspective or like didn't get a fair treatment in the story. So she gets her own in this.
Actually, really funny because I heard this book.
Yeah.
And in my head, it was like an American classic novel from like 1800 that like, that's really bizarre. Like, I didn't know that's what it was.
Yeah. So Jean Rhys was born in Dominica in 1890. When was this written? Oh, 1966.
Oh my god,
Super
wait,
short.
born in 1890 and written in 66.
Oh, her only comment on her sudden great success was, it has come too late.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
She's in like her 70s.
Yeah. Last ones.
So this is E. Lockhart's Genuine Fraud. I haven't read the book that it's based on. So it is, again, I don't know if I should spoil it. So Genuine Fraud, I mean, don't listen to this if you don't want any spoilers at all. I'm just...
Skip like 30 seconds.
Yeah. It's basically a retelling of The Talented Mr. Ripley. It's like a very violent story about like lying about your identity and murder, and this
I've seen the film.
Right.
Yeah.
So I haven't even seen the film. I'm
What?
so
Okay.
I don't know what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
But this is like a version of it told about teenage girls, basically. So it's about like young women. And I enjoyed it. I did find it like It's one of those things where you're like, oh, I hate everyone in this book. Like, oh, the characters are awful.
Yeah, it's like, don't like the main character, don't like the friend.
Yeah, it's like, you don't come out of it feeling like, what a nice bunch of people.
But it also feels real. Like, those are real people.
Yeah.
And it's told backwards.
Yeah.
Which I really loved, because it takes a while for you to realize. So you're like, okay, and then it goes to the next chapter, you're like, oh, interesting. And then you're a couple chapters in, you're like, oh, I think we're going back. And like, that's quite fun. Which makes it very rereadable. Like when you finish it, you kind of, you figured everything out and you want to go again. And then this is not a super heavy influence, but it's definitely in there, and I figured I would include it next to Genuine Fraud. It is We Were Liars, also by E. Lockhart. This was published when I worked at Hotkey Books, so I feel like I'm always very, you know, I'm obviously very biased about this book, but I love it. I actually want to reread it again.
Yeah, me too.
And I always give this as an example of like really good in-depth YA when people ask me for recommendations. This is about a rich family. The main character is called, Cadence. And every summer they go to this beautiful island that the family owns together. There's like the granddad and then 3 daughters and then all the kids. And one year she comes back and she basically doesn't really remember what happened the year before. And again, it's like a mystery that you're trying to figure out what happened to her. But I think it's written very like lyrically, with a lot of gaps in it. And then a lot of the chapters start with little fairy tales. Like there once was a girl with 3 sisters, or like with 2 sisters. There once was a dad with 3 daughters, and then, or there once was a king with 3 daughters. So there's a lot of references to King Lear in here. When I was reading it, I hadn't read King Lear, so I kind of saw like fairy tale inspiration in that. So again, a bit more like light touch, but God, I love this book still.
It's such a good book. E. Lockhart, like her books, some of my like absolute favorite like teenage kind of romance books. Like she wrote The Boyfriend List and like Boy Book and stuff, and those were formative for me when I was a teenager, because it's about like a girl with anxiety and like her relationships and friendships, and it was like, it really spoke to me as a person with anxiety who had a lot of trouble with relationships and friendships. So it is like, it was really interesting to read this because it felt like it was kind of her first like more, like I'm not sure if that's exactly accurate, like I don't know if she'd done anything else before that, but it felt like this is where she kind of switched over to doing something a bit like darker and more gritty and like richer.
She's also done, I wanted to include it in this video but didn't have enough time to read it, Fly on the Wall.
Oh yeah, I haven't
which
read it.
is a rewrite of, hold on, this is what it is. Fly on the Wall is a feminist reworking of Metamorphoses by Franz Kafka. Love it.
What?
I know.
Oh my god, I can't wait to read that. That sounds just bizarre.
Yeah, well actually I want to show one as like a TBR one that I haven't read yet. So this is called Once and Future, and it is a rewrite of King Arthur. One of the characters is a reincarnation of King Arthur. When I was reading the description, it says something about how she's like a space refugee and she lands on Earth. And it says on here that it's like gender bending, it's a galaxy-wide fight for peace and equality. It's like, I am so intrigued by
There's
this.
so much in
It
that.
sounds absolutely mad, but also really, really fun. So yes, this is one of the ones I'll be reading next. I will put links to all of these books in the description so you can check them out. Also put a link to Lex's book if you'd like to pre-order or buy if it's already out. Come see us at Foils, come hang out with us. And we're doing a video on Lex's channel
about Twilight, about revisiting Twilight 10 years on.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks.
Thanks for being in my video.
No worries.
And we'll see you next time. Doei!